When Khalid invites Noor, a humble cleaner, to pose as his date at his ex-fiancée's wedding, he never expects her to uncover his family's darkest secrets. Can love triumph in a world where power rules? Before we get into the story, comment below. Where in the world you're watching from today? Khalid Al Farouk stood at the window of his penthouse office, looking down at the glittering Dubai skyline, his dark eyes fixed on the reflection of the cream envelope sitting on his desk, the wedding invitation that had arrived that morning. Layla's wedding invitation. Just thinking about her name made his jaw clench. Mr. Al Farouk? His assistant Ahmed's voice broke through his thoughts. The board members are waiting in the conference room. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Khalid said, not turning around. He heard the door close softly behind Ahmed. Khalid walked to his desk and picked up the invitation. The paper was expensive, with gold lettering announcing the union of Layla Hassan and Omar Rahman. Omar Rahman, his biggest business rival, and the man Layla had left him for 6 months ago. Cold and emotionless, she had called him that day. You care more about your empire than about love, Khalid. At least Omar knows how to make a woman feel special. The words still stung even now. Khalid had built his empire from the ground up, turning his father's modest company into one of the largest conglomerates in the Middle East. He'd given Layla everything she could want: a mansion, jewelry, cars, vacations. But apparently that hadn't been enough. He was about to throw the invitation in the trash when something caught his eye. There was a handwritten note at the bottom in Layla's elegant script. "I do hope you'll attend, Khalid. It wouldn't be the same without you there to witness our happiness." Khalid's blood boiled. This wasn't just an invitation, it was a challenge. Layla wanted to parade her new life in front of him, to show everyone how she had moved on to bigger and better things while he remained alone. He pressed the intercom button. "Ahmed, cancel the board meeting. Tell them something urgent came up." Instead of heading to the conference room, Khalid took the elevator down to the ground floor of his building. He needed to think, and he always thought better while walking. The lobby was quiet at this hour, with just the cleaning staff going about their work. As he passed through, he noticed a young woman carefully polishing the massive marble column near the entrance. Unlike the other cleaners who kept their heads down, she was humming softly to herself as she worked, seemingly lost in her own world. Her name tag read Noor. Khalid had seen her before, but had never paid much attention. Today, though, something made him stop. She had a quiet grace about her, even in her simple uniform. When she noticed him standing there, she didn't scramble away like others might. Instead, she smiled politely and gave a small nod before returning to her work. That's when the idea hit him. It was outrageous, possibly crazy, but the more he thought about it, the more perfect it seemed. Layla wanted to humiliate him? Fine. He would show up at her wedding, but not alone. He would bring someone she would never expect, someone who would challenge everything she thought she knew about him and about what made a person worthy of respect. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the column. "Noor, isn't it?" She turned, looking surprised that he knew her name. "Yes, sir? Would you step into my office for a moment? I have a proposition for you." Noor hesitated, clearly confused. "Sir, I still have the lobby to finish. It's all right. I'll speak with your supervisor." Khalid's tone was gentle but firm. "Please, it won't take long." In his office, Noor sat nervously on the edge of one of his leather chairs while Khalid explained his proposal. He wanted her to accompany him to a high society wedding. He would provide everything: the dress, jewelry, transportation. All she had to do was be herself. "But why me?" Noor asked, her brow furrowed. "Surely there are many other women who would be more suitable." Khalid leaned back in his chair. "Because you're real, Noor. I've watched you work. You take pride in what you do, you're kind to everyone, and you don't pretend to be something you're not. That's exactly what I need." "You mean you want to use me to make someone jealous?" Her directness surprised him. "Not jealous," Khalid corrected. "I want to make a point about what truly matters in a person." Noor was quiet for a long moment, studying him. Finally, she spoke. "With all due respect, Mr. Al Farouk, it sounds like you're trying to prove something to yourself as much as to anyone else." Her words hit closer to home than Khalid cared to admit, but instead of anger, he felt a spark of admiration for her honesty. "Perhaps you're right," he acknowledged, "but will you help me? I promise you'll be treated with the utmost respect and no one will make you feel uncomfortable." Noor looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "My family depends on this job, Mr. Al Farouk. I can't risk losing it." You have my word that your job is secure regardless of your decision. Khalid meant it. Take some time to think about it. Let me know tomorrow. After Noor left his office, Khalid stood again at the window watching the sun set over the city. He thought about Layla, about Omar, about the empire he'd built, and for the first time in months he felt something other than anger or hurt. He felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this crazy plan would lead to something unexpected. Little did he know just how unexpected things would become. Noor couldn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold in front of her, while her mother's words echoed in her mind. Allah doesn't give us challenges we can't handle. But was this a challenge or a mistake waiting to happen? Her tiny apartment was quiet except for the gentle snoring coming from her parents' room. They'd moved in with her after her father's stroke left him unable to work. The medical bills had been enormous, and at times like these, looking at the pile of unpaid bills on her counter, Mr. Al-Farouk's offer seemed almost like an answer to her prayers. The next morning, Noor arrived at work earlier than usual. She needed the quiet time to think. As she was cleaning the brass handrails of the main staircase, she heard the clicking of expensive heels on marble. Well, if it isn't the little cleaning girl who caught Khalid's eye. Noor turned to find herself face to face with a stunning woman in a designer suit. She recognized her immediately from the photos in Mr. Al-Farouk's office. Layla Hassan. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am," Noor said quietly, continuing to polish the railing. Layla stepped closer, her perfume overwhelmingly sweet. "Let me give you some friendly advice. Whatever game Khalid is playing, don't get caught up in it. He'll use you and throw you away just like he does with everything else." "Mr. Al-Farouk has been nothing but kind to me," Noor replied, meeting Layla's gaze steadily. "Kind?" Layla laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Khalid doesn't know the meaning of the word. Everything he does is calculated. Everything is about winning." She adjusted her expensive handbag on her shoulder. "Just remember, you're nothing but a pawn to him." As Layla walked away, her heels echoing through the lobby, Noor's hands trembled slightly. But instead of fear, she felt something else. Determination. She'd seen something in Layla's eyes that surprised her. Insecurity. Later that morning, Noor knocked on Khalid's office door. He looked up from his computer, his expression unreadable. "I'll do it," she said simply. "I'll go to the wedding with you." Khalid studied her face. "What changed your mind?" "Let's just say I had an interesting conversation this morning." Noor straightened her shoulders. "But I have conditions." For a moment, Khalid looked startled. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. "Please sit down. What are your conditions?" "First, I want to choose my own dress. Something modest that I'm comfortable in." Noor sat down, her hands folded in her lap. "Second, I want to be myself. No pretending to be someone I'm not." "That's exactly what I want," Khalid assured her. "And third," Noor took a deep breath, "I want you to help my father get into the rehabilitation program at Al-Shifa Hospital. Not for free, I'll work extra hours to pay for it, but they have a waiting list, and—" "Consider it done," Khalida interrupted. "No extra hours needed. Mr. Al-Farouk, I don't want charity." "It's not charity, Noor, it's payment for a service." He leaned forward. "You're doing me a favor by attending this wedding with me. Let me do this in return." Noor felt tears prick at her eyes, but blinked them away. "Thank you," she said softly. "Don't thank me yet," Khalid warned. "The hard part is still to come. We have 3 weeks to prepare you for one of the biggest society weddings of the year." What followed was unlike anything Noor had ever experienced. Every evening after her shift, Khalid arranged for her to meet with different experts. There was Mrs. Rahman, a retired etiquette teacher, who taught her which fork to use for each course and how to carry herself at formal events. Then there was Sarah, a speech coach who helped her practice making conversation with high society guests. But it was the evening sessions with Khalid himself that proved most interesting. They would sit in his office, sharing simple meals from the local Lebanese restaurant, while he told her about the guests she would meet at the wedding. He never talked down to her or made her feel inferior. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in her opinions and insights. "Tell me about your family," he asked one evening, after they'd finished discussing the seating arrangements at formal dinners. Noor found herself opening up about her father's stroke, about moving her parents in with her, about her dreams of someday going back to school. To her surprise, Khalid listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. "You've sacrificed a lot." "For them," he observed. "It's not a sacrifice when you love someone," Noor replied. "Isn't that what family means?" Khalid was quiet for a long moment. My father used to say that love makes you weak, that business is business, and feelings only get in the way. And what do you think? I used to believe him. Khalid's eyes met hers. Now, I'm not so sure. As the weeks passed, Noor began to see changes in Khalid. Small things at first. He started greeting the security guards by name, thanking the sea. Cafeteria staff, noticing the people who had always been invisible to him before. She also noticed him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, with an expression she couldn't quite read. One afternoon, just a week before the wedding, Noor was leaving work when she overheard two executives talking in the parking garage. Did you hear? Omar Rahman's company is making a move to buy out Al Farouk Industries' smaller subsidiaries. Right when Khalid's distracted with this wedding business. Smart timing. Noor's heart sank. Was this what Layla had meant about everything being calculated? Was Omar using his wedding as a business strategy? That night, she couldn't sleep again. But this time, her worry wasn't for herself. It was for Khalid. She'd seen glimpses of the man behind the powerful facade, and despite her best efforts, she was beginning to care what happened to him. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Noor realized something that shocked her. Somewhere between the etiquette lessons and evening conversations, she'd stopped thinking of this as just a favor or a business arrangement, and that realization terrified her more than all of Layla's threats combined. The dress fitting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. Khalid had arranged for Noor to visit one of Dubai's most exclusive boutiques, but when she arrived, her heart nearly stopped. Through the store window, she saw Layla trying on what was clearly a second wedding dress, surrounded by fawning attendants. I can come back another time, Noor said quickly to the store manager, but it was too late. Layla had spotted her. Noor, what a surprise, Layla called out, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Shopping for the big event. How generous of Khalid to help dress his staff. The store manager looked uncertainly between them. Noor straightened her shoulders, remembering Khalid's words about dignity being more powerful than anger. Yes, Mr. Al Farouk has been very kind, she said calmly, but I'm actually here to meet someone. Right on cue, an elegant older woman swept into the boutique. Noor, darling, I'm so sorry I'm late. It was Mrs. Rahman, Khalid's etiquette teacher, who had obviously been briefed about the situation. She air-kissed Noor's cheeks, as if they were old friends. Layla, dear, what a lovely surprise. That dress is interesting. Trying to outshine your own wedding gown? Layla's face tightened. I simply want everything to be perfect for the reception. Omar spares no expense for me. How nice, Mrs. Rahman said dismissively. Come, Noor. I've had them set aside some selections that will be perfect for you in the private fitting room. Noor finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Thank you for that rescue. Nonsense, dear. I've known Layla since she was a child, always wanting what she can't have, then not appreciating it once she gets it. Mrs. Rahman started pulling dresses from a rack. Now let's find something that will make you feel beautiful without trying too hard. That's the secret. True elegance never tries too hard. The dress they chose was perfect. A deep emerald green that complemented Noor's olive skin, with modest long sleeves and a flowing skirt. It was elegant without being flashy, exactly what Noor wanted. When she returned to work that evening, she found Khalid waiting in the lobby. How did the fitting go, he asked, then noticed her expression. What happened? Nothing I couldn't handle, Noor assured him, but her voice must have betrayed something because Khalid's face darkened. Layla was there, wasn't she? When Noor nodded, he cursed under his breath. I should have known. She never does anything by accident. Mr. Al Farouk. Noor hesitated, then decided he needed to know. I overheard something yesterday. About Omar Rahman making moves to buy your subsidiaries? Khalid's expression turned guarded. You don't need to worry about business matters, Noor. With all due respect, sir, I think I do. If I'm going to be part of whatever this is, I need to know what I'm walking into. They stood in silence for a moment, the empty lobby echoing around them. Finally, Khalid gestured toward the elevators. Come up to my office. There's something you should see. In his office, Khalid pulled up several documents on his computer. Omar's been planning this takeover for months. The wedding. It's all part of his strategy. Keep me distracted. Make me look weak in front of the board. And Layla? She probably knew from the beginning. His voice was bitter. She always wanted more power, more influence. Omar could give her that. Noor studied his face. Is that why you asked me to the wedding? To show them you're not affected? Initially. Yes, Khalid met her eyes. But now, the phone on his desk buzzed, interrupting whatever he was about to say. Mr. Al-Farouk, the board members are here for the emergency meeting. Khalid pressed the intercom. Give me 5 minutes. He turned back to Noor. I have to handle this. Of course. Noor moved toward the door, but Khalid caught her arm gently. Noor, what I was going to say. These past weeks, getting to know you. He seemed to be struggling with words, something she'd never seen before. You've shown me what real strength looks like. Not power or money, but strength of character. Noor felt her heart skip a beat. But before she could respond, the office door opened and board members started filing in. She slipped out quietly, her arm still tingling where he'd touched her. The next few days were a blur of preparations. Noor's father started his rehabilitation program at Al-Shifa Hospital, and the improvement in his spirits was immediate. Her mother cried with joy when he took his first steps with the physical therapist. But while Noor's family life was looking up, storm clouds were gathering at Al-Farouk Industries. She noticed more late-night meetings, more worried faces among the executives. Khalid looked more tired each day, though he still made time for their evening conversations. Then, 3 days before the wedding, everything changed. Noor was cleaning the executive floor when she heard raised voices from Khalid's office. The door was slightly ajar. You can't be serious. It was Ahmed, Khalid's assistant. The board can't do this to you. They're scared, Khalid replied wearily. Omar's offer looks too good on paper. Unless I can prove he's using illegal tactics by the end of the week, I'll lose controlling interest in my own company. The wedding? Will go on as planned. I won't give them the satisfaction of seeing me run away. Noor's cloth slipped from her hands, making a soft sound. Both men turned to the door. Noor, Khalid called out softly. Come in, please. She entered, her heart pounding. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overhear. It's all right. Khalid dismissed Ahmed with a nod. Once they were alone, he sank into his chair, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. I suppose you heard everything? Most of it, Noor admitted. What are you going to do? What I've always done, fight. He gave her a tired smile. But I'll understand if you want to back out of the wedding now. This isn't what you signed up for. Noor thought about everything she'd learned about this man over the past weeks. About his pride. Yes, but also his hidden kindness. About how he'd helped her father without making her feel like a charity case. About the way he'd started seeing people as people, not just pieces on a chessboard. When I was a little girl, she said slowly, my father taught me that standing by someone only when things are easy isn't standing by them at all. Khalid looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Noor. Just then, his phone buzzed again. Another crisis, another meeting. But before she left his office, Noor turned back. I'm still going to that wedding with you, Mr. Al-Farouk. And we're going to show them exactly what kind of man you really are. As she walked away, she didn't see Khalid watching her, or the way his expression softened as he whispered, I don't deserve you. But someone else saw. Outside the office, Layla stood in the shadows, her perfectly manicured hands clenched into fists. She pulled out her phone and dialed quickly. Omar, we have a problem. That little cleaning girl. She's not just for show. I think Khalid actually cares about her. She paused, listening. Yes, I know what to do. By the time the wedding comes, she won't be an issue anymore. In the elevator heading down to her cleaning cart, Noor had no idea that her decision to stand by Khalid had just set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The morning started like any other. Noor arrived early at Al-Farouk Industries, ready to begin her usual cleaning routine. But when she reached for her cleaning cart in the supply room, her supervisor, Mr. Wilson, was waiting for her. Noor, we need to talk. His face was grim. There's been a complaint. Her heart sank. A complaint about what? Someone reported seeing you going through confidential papers in Mr. Al-Farouk's office after hours. He held up a hand as she started to protest. There's security footage. That's impossible. I would never... I'm sorry, Noor, but with allegations this serious, we have to suspend you pending an investigation. Noor felt the room spin. Mr. Wilson, please. You know me. I've worked here for 3 years without a single problem. I know. That's why this is so disappointing. He handed her an envelope. Security will escort you out. Don't try to contact Mr. Al-Farouk directly. All communication should go through HR. In a daze, Noor followed the security guard to the lobby. As they passed the main reception desk, she saw Layla standing there talking to Omar Rahman. Layla caught her eye and smiled sweetly. Outside, the Dubai heat hit her like a wall. Noor sat on a bench, trying to think clearly. Her father's rehabilitation, her family's bills, the wedding that was now just 2 days away, everything was falling apart. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Now you see how easily your life can change, Layla's voice purred. But there's a simple solution. Call Khalid. Tell him you can't attend the wedding. Make up any excuse. Do that, and the security footage showing you stealing documents will disappear. You set me up. Of course I did. Did you really think someone like you could step into our world without consequences? Layla's voice hardened. You have one. How to call Khalid or the footage goes to the police. Oh, and Noor, your father's treatment at Al-Shifa. Consider it cancelled. The line went dead. Noor's hands shook as she stared at her phone. Everything she'd worked for, everything her family needed, was being threatened. And for what? Because she dared to care about someone above her station? Meanwhile, Khalid was in back-to-back meetings, unaware of what was happening. The board was pushing him to accept Omar's buyout offer, arguing it was better than a hostile takeover. The shareholders are nervous, Khalid, one board member said. Omar's offering stability. Stability? Khalid scoffed. He's offering to gut this company and sell it for parts. Then fight back. Show us you're focused on business, not on personal matters. Khalid knew what they meant. Gossip about him. Bringing a cleaning lady to society's biggest wedding had spread like wildfire. His phone buzzed. Another message from Noor. Third one today. He'd have to call her back later. It wasn't until evening that Khalid finally had a moment to breathe. He loosened his tie and checked his messages. His blood ran cold. Mr. Al-Farouk, I'm sorry, but I can't attend the wedding with you. Thank you for everything you've done for my family, but please don't contact me again. Something was wrong. This didn't sound like Noor at all. He tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. Then Ahmed burst into his office. Sir, you need to see this. He pulled up the security footage on Khalid's computer. HR sent it over. They're saying Noor was caught stealing company documents. Khalid watched the grainy video. It showed someone who looked like Noor going through his desk late at night, but something felt off. When was this recorded? Last night, apparently. Impossible. Khalid's eyes narrowed. Noor was with me in my office until 9 discussing the wedding arrangements. This footage is fake. He pressed the intercom. Get me the head of security, now. Then he grabbed his keys. Ahmed, cancel everything else today, and find out who authorized Noor's suspension. Across town, Noor sat in her small apartment trying to explain to her parents why she'd lost her job. Her father, still weak from his stroke, reached for her hand. Beta, he said softly, using his childhood nickname for her. What aren't you telling us? Before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. Her mother opened it to find Khalid Al-Farouk standing there, his suit jacket off, his sleeves rolled up. I apologize for coming unannounced, he said, but we need to talk. Noor's mother's eyes widened. She quickly invited him in, offering tea, but Khalid politely declined. His eyes were fixed on Noor. Why didn't you come to me? He asked quietly. They said I couldn't contact you, Noor replied, not meeting his gaze. And then Layla, Khalid's voice sharpened. What did she do? Slowly, Noor told him everything. The fake security footage, the threats against her father's treatment, the ultimatum about the wedding. With each word, Khalid's expression grew darker. So you see, Noor finished, I had no choice. There's always a choice. Khalid pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Ahmed, execute Plan B. Yes, all of it. And call Mrs. Rahman. Tell her we need her help proving where Noor really was last night. He turned back to Noor. The security footage is fake. We can prove it. As for your father's treatment, I've already paid for the entire program in advance. Layla has no power there. But the wedding is exactly where we need to be. There was a dangerous glint in his eye. Layla and Omar thought they could use this wedding to destroy me. Fine, let's give them a wedding they'll never forget. Noor's mother, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. Mr. Al-Farouk, before you continue, I need to know something. My daughter's reputation, her future, these are not games. To us, are you truly prepared to stand by her no matter what happens? Khalid turned to face her parents. For the first time, his polished facade cracked completely. When I first asked Noor to attend this wedding, I had all the wrong reasons. I wanted revenge to make a point. But your daughter, he looked at Noor, his voice softening. She showed me what real dignity looks like, what real strength is. And I promise you, on my father's grave, I will not let anyone hurt her. There was a moment of profound silence. Then Noor's father smiled. "Good," he said simply, "because if you did, all the security in Dubai couldn't protect you from me, weak leg or not." The tension broke. Even Khalid laughed. But as they began, planning their next moves, none of them noticed the car parked across the street, or the man inside taking pictures of Khalid entering Noor's humble apartment building. Within an hour, those photos would be on Omar's desk, and Omar would realize that what had started as a simple business takeover had just become much more complicated, because the great Khalid Al-Farouk, it seemed, had finally revealed his weakness. And in their world, weakness was all it took to bring an empire crashing down. The morning newspapers hit the stands with explosive headlines: "Business Tycoon Secret Romance with Cleaning Lady." The photos were everywhere. Khalid entering Noor's apartment building, looking decidedly unbusinesslike with his rolled-up sleeves and loosened tie. Khalid's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Board members, shareholders, reporters, everyone wanted answers. But he was focused on something else entirely. He sat in his office, watching the stock prices of Al-Farouk Industries drop steadily on his computer screen while Ahmed read out the latest news. "They're saying you've lost focus on the business," Ahmed reported, "that your personal situation is affecting your judgment." "Perfect," Khalid said, surprising his assistant. "That's exactly what Omar wants them to think." "Sir? While everyone's distracted by this scandal, they won't notice what we're really doing." Khalid pulled up another screen on his computer. "How are we doing with the offshore accounts?" "Everything's in place. Mrs. Rahman's contacts at the Financial Authority confirmed it. Omar's been moving money through shell companies. Once we release the proof—" "Not yet," Khalid interrupted. "We wait until the wedding. Maximum impact." Meanwhile, Noor was dealing with her own crisis. Her phone was flooded with messages from co-workers and neighbors. Some were supportive, others judgmental. Her mother had unplugged their landline after the fifth reporter called. "I'm so sorry," Noor said, watching her father read the newspaper with a frown. "I never meant to bring this kind of attention to our family." Her father put down the paper. "You know what I see in these photos? I see a man who came to our home, looked me in the eye, and promised to protect my daughter. That means more than any headline." Just then, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Mrs. Rahman, carrying several shopping bags. "No time for tears, dear," she announced briskly. "We have work to do. The vultures want a show? Let's give them one they'll never forget." She began pulling items from her bags: beauty products, accessories, and finally, a garment bag containing Noor's emerald green dress. "The wedding is tomorrow," Mrs. Rahman said, "and you're going to show everyone that true class has nothing to do with money or status." As Mrs. Rahman worked her magic, Noor's mother watched with tears in her eyes. "You look like a princess," she whispered when they were done. "No," Mrs. Rahman corrected. "She looks like herself. That's far more powerful." Across town, in a luxury penthouse, Layla was having a meltdown. This wasn't supposed to happen, she screamed at Omar. The scandal was supposed to make him back down, not make him more determined. Omar watched her pace, his expression cold. "Calm down. This might actually work in our favor." "How? Everyone's talking about them. My wedding is supposed to be about me." "Exactly," Omar smiled. "You're going to give them something else to talk about tomorrow during your speech." Back at Al-Farouk Industries, Khalid was in his final board meeting before the wedding. "The numbers don't lie," one board member was saying. "We're losing investor confidence. Omar's offer might be our only option." 24 hours, Khalid replied calmly. "Give me 24 hours before you make any decisions." "This isn't about the cleaning girl, is it?" another board member asked skeptically. Khalid stood, straightening his jacket. "Gentlemen, in my experience, people who underestimate others based on their position in life often miss what's right in front of them. Tomorrow, you'll understand exactly what I mean." As he left the boardroom, his phone buzzed with a message from Noor. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that these past weeks have meant more to me than any headline could ever say." Khalid felt something in his chest tighten. He started to type a response, then deleted it. Some things needed to be said in person. That evening, the city was buzzing with anticipation. The wedding of the year had become the scandal of the year, and everyone who was anyone had an opinion. But in two very different parts of Dubai, two people were having very similar thoughts. In her modest bedroom, Noor touched the emerald green dress hanging on her closet door. "Please let me be strong enough," she whispered. In his penthouse, Khalid stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. Please let me be worthy of her trust, he murmured. Neither knew that at that very moment, in a private dining room at the Burj Al Arab, Omar was hosting a secret meeting with key board members of Al Farouk Industries. Champagne flowed as he laid out his vision for the company's future, a future that, if he had his way, would leave both Khalid and Noor with nothing. To tomorrow, Omar raised his glass, and the end of the great Khalid Al Farouk. But Omar had made the same mistake that Layla had. He'd underestimated the power of true feelings in a world built on false appearances, and tomorrow, at the most anticipated wedding in Dubai's history, everyone would learn just how expensive that mistake would be. As the night deepened, a sense of destiny settled over the city. Tomorrow would change everything. The only question was, for whom? Wedding days are supposed to dawn bright and beautiful, but on the morning of Layla and Omar's wedding, dark. Clouds hung over Dubai, threatening rain, something rare for that time of year. It's a sign, Noor's mother said as she helped her daughter get ready. Allah is watching, and He knows whose heart is true. Noor stood in front of her small mirror, hardly recognizing herself. Mrs. Rahman had arrived at dawn to help with her preparation. The emerald dress fit perfectly, and her dark hair was swept up elegantly, with a few soft curls framing her face. Remember, Mrs. Rahman said, adjusting Noor's dress one last time, when they try to make you feel small, stand tall. Your worth isn't measured by their standards. A sleek black car waited outside, sent by Khalid. As Noor prepared to leave, her father stopped her. Beta, he said softly, whatever happens today, know that we are proud of you, not because of whose arm you'll be on, but because of who you are. Across town, in his penthouse, Khalid was also preparing for battle. He checked his phone one last time. Everything was in place. The evidence of Omar's illegal dealings was ready to be revealed at exactly the right moment. The press is already gathering at the Palm Jumeirah, Ahmed reported. It's the biggest society wedding in years. Not for long, Khalid muttered, straightening his tie. Is everything ready with the financial authorities? Yes, sir, they're waiting for your signal. The wedding venue was a stunning beachfront property at the Palm Jumeirah. Hundreds of guests were already arriving, dressed in their finest. Camera flashes went off constantly as Dubai's elite made their entrances. Khalid's car pulled up to the entrance, where reporters immediately swarmed around. But when he stepped out and walked around to open the passenger door, offering his hand to Noor, the crowd fell silent for a moment before erupting in excited chatter. Noor felt her heart pounding as she took Khalid's arm. Everyone's staring, she whispered. Let them, he replied quietly. You look beautiful. Inside, the ballroom was decorated lavishly with thousands of white roses. Guests turned to watch as Khalid and Noor made their way to their assigned table, prominently placed near the front, where everyone could see them. A calculated move by Layla, no doubt. Omar's business partners were already seated at nearby tables. Khalid nodded to them politely while squeezing Noor's hand reassuringly under the table. Khalid, a booming voice called out. It was Hassan al-Rashid, one of the most influential board members. Quite a stir you've caused in the papers. You know how the press loves their stories, Hassan, Khalid replied smoothly. Yes, but this time they might be right about your judgment being compromised. Hassan glanced meaningfully at Noor. Before Khalid could respond, Noor spoke up. Mr. al-Rashid, I believe good judgment is shown by recognizing true value, whether it comes in expensive packaging or not. Don't you agree? Hassan looked startled, then thoughtful. Interesting perspective, my dear. Just then, music announced the arrival of the bride. Layla appeared in a gown that must have cost a fortune, dripping with diamonds. But there was something tight about her smile as she walked down the aisle to where Omar waited. The ceremony began, full of pomp and ritual. But halfway through, Khalid's phone buzzed silently. A message from Ahmed. They took the bait. Financial authorities are moving in. Khalid allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. Omar had been so focused on the wedding and destroying Khalid that he hadn't noticed his offshore accounts being traced. The ceremony concluded, and guests moved to the reception area for speeches. Omar took the microphone first, playing the role of devoted husband perfectly. Today isn't. Everything was chaos. Police were going through Omar's former office, carrying out boxes of documents. Board members hurried through the halls, looking worried. Khalid was in his office, his jacket off, surrounded by papers. When he saw Noor, his tired face lit up. I'm sorry to call you in like this, he said, but I needed to see you. Is everything okay? Omar's arrest is just the beginning. His whole network is being investigated. But that's not why I called you here. He took a deep breath. The board is meeting in an hour to discuss the future of the company, and I need to know something before I go in there. Noor's heart started beating faster. What? If I walked away from all of this, the company, the wealth, everything, would you... The office door burst open. It was Hassan al-Rashid, looking frantic. Khalid, they found something in Omar's files, something about your father's death. The room went silent. Noor watched as all the color drained from Khalid's face. What about my father's death? Hassan glanced nervously at Noor. Khalid nodded. She can hear this. There are documents suggesting your father's car accident wasn't an accident at all. Omar had been planning this takeover for years. He had help from someone inside your family. Who? Khalid's voice was deadly quiet. Your uncle Samir. He's been working with Omar from the beginning. Noor watched as Khalid's world crumbled for the second time in 24 hours. She'd heard about his uncle Samir, the man who had helped raise Khalid after his father's death, who had taught him everything about business. Where is he now? Khalid asked. That's the thing, Hassan said. He's disappeared, and he took something with him. Documents that could destroy not just Omar's empire, but yours too. Khalid turned to the window, his shoulders tense. Leave. Gus, please. After Hassan left, Noor stepped closer to Khalid. What can I do? He turned to face her, his eyes filled with pain and anger. You should go. What's coming next? And it's going to get ugly. I can't ask you to be part of this. You're not asking. I'm offering. Noor, you don't understand. My uncle, he knows. Things about me, about my past. Things I'm not proud of. Then tell me, she said simply. Let me decide for myself. For a moment, it looked like he might. Then his phone rang. The board was waiting. Go home, he said softly. Please, I'll call you when this is over. But as Noor left his office, she knew she couldn't just walk away. Not when she saw the lost look in his eyes, so different from the confident man who had danced with her last night. In the lobby, she ran into Mrs. Rahman. My dear, the older woman said, taking in Noor's worried expression. Walk with me. As they strolled through the nearby park, Mrs. Rahman told her things about Khalid's past that never made it into the newspapers, about how his father's death had changed him from a carefree young man into someone obsessed with control and success, about how his uncle Samir had encouraged that transformation, pushing him to be harder, colder, more ruthless. But then you came along, Mrs. Rahman said, and for the first time in years, I saw glimpses of the old Khalid. What should I do? Noor asked. The question is, my dear, what are you willing to do? Because Samir won't just destroy Khalid's business, he'll destroy the man himself. And right now Khalid thinks pushing everyone away will protect them. Noor thought about it. She thought about her simple life before all this, about her family's worries, about the sensible thing to do. Then she thought about Khalid's face, when he looked at her while they danced, about the way he'd defended her, about the man she knew he could be if he just let go of his past. I need your help, she said to Mrs. Rahman, and I think I know where Samir might be. Miles away in a private villa on the outskirts of Dubai, Samir al-Farouk was indeed preparing to leave the country. But first, he had a meeting. Everything is going according to plan, he said to the person sitting across from him. Khalid will be too busy dealing with Omar's mess to notice what we're really doing. Are you sure? His companion asked. He seems different since that girl came into his life. Ah yes, the cleaning lady. Samir smiled coldly. Don't worry about her. By the time we're done, Khalid won't trust anyone, not even her. The companion leaned forward into the light. It was Layla, her wedding makeup replaced by a hard, determined expression. He humiliated me, she said. Make him pay. Oh, he will, Samir promised. By the time we're done, my dear nephew will wish he'd never heard the name Noor. Back at Al Farouk Industries, Khalid sat alone in his office looking at an old photo of himself with his father and uncle. The board meeting had been postponed until tomorrow. Everything was falling apart, and for the first time in his life, he didn't know how to fix it. His phone lit up with a message from Noor. Your past doesn't define you, let me help. He started to reply, then stopped. The last person he'd trusted completely was his uncle. How could he risk trusting again? But as the sun set over Dubai, casting long shadows through his office window, Khalid al-Farouk was about to learn that sometimes the biggest risk isn't trusting someone, it's pushing away the one person who could save you from yourself. Some secrets stay buried for years, hidden beneath layers of lies and betrayal. But when they finally come to light, they change everything. Noor sat in Mrs. Rahman's elegant living room, surrounded by old photo albums. The older woman had kept detailed records of Dubai's social scene for decades, and somewhere in these pictures was the clue they needed. There, Mrs. Rahman pointed to a yellowed photograph. That was taken the week before Khalid's father died. The photo showed a younger Samir Al-Farouk at a business dinner, sitting next to a familiar face, Omar's father. They knew each other? Noor asked, surprised. More than that, they were planning something big, something that would have merged their companies. Mrs. Rahman's eyes narrowed, but Khalid's father opposed it. He said some deals cost too much. A week later he was dead, Noor whispered, in a car accident, just like the one they tried to arrange for Khalid at his wedding to Layla. Noor's head snapped up. What? Oh yes, dear. The brakes on Khalid's car had been tampered with. He was lucky to survive. Everyone assumed it was just an accident, but now, we have to tell him. We will. But first, we need proof. Khalid won't believe his uncle capable of this without evidence. Meanwhile, at Al Farouk Industries, Khalid was facing his own crisis. The board had called an emergency meeting. The markets are nervous, Hassan explained. With Omar's arrest and these rumors about your uncle, our stock is dropping. We need to show stability. What are you suggesting? Khalid asked, though he already knew. Step down temporarily, just until this blows over. Let someone else handle the day-to-day operations. Someone like you, Hassan? The older man had the grace to look embarrassed. It would just be temporary. Before Khalid could respond, his secretary burst in. Sir, you need to see this. The office TV was showing. Breaking news. Samir Al-Farouk had called a press conference. My nephew is a troubled man, Samir was saying, his face the picture of concern. First the scandal with his former fiancée, then this unfortunate business with Omar Rahman, and now this inappropriate relationship with an employee. I fear the pressure of running the company has become too much for him. Khalid's hands clenched into fists as his uncle continued. As his only living relative, I feel it's my duty to step in. I'm officially contesting Khalid's control of Al Farouk Industries on grounds of mental instability. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Phones started ringing, but Khalid barely heard any of it. His mind was racing back to his father's last words. Trust your heart, son, in business and in life. He'd forgotten that advice over the years, buried it under layers of ambition and control. But now, his phone buzzed. A message from Noor. Meet me at Al Qasr Hotel. Bring your father's old files, trust me. Across town in Samir's villa, Layla was pacing nervously. Are you sure this will work? She asked. Khalid's not stupid, he'll fight back. Of course he will, Samir smiled. That's exactly what we want. The more he fights, the more unstable he'll appear. And when the truth about his father's death comes out, what truth? The truth we're going to create, my dear. After all, dead men can't deny our version of events. At the Al Qasr Hotel, Noor waited in a private meeting room with Mrs. Rahman and someone else. An elderly man, Khalid, had never... There's something odd here. These bank transfers from 20 years ago, they're still active. What do you mean? Money is still moving through these accounts, large amounts every month to an offshore company called Desert Rose Holdings. Noor's eyes widened. That's the company that owns the villa where Samir is staying. I saw the name on the gate. Khalid made a sharp turn, tires squealing on the wet road. Ahmed, what do we know about Desert Rose Holdings? Checking now, sir. Ahmed's fingers flew over the tablet. It's registered to your mother. She's been receiving regular payments for 20 years. The pieces started falling into place in Khalid's mind. She was paid to disappear, to let everyone think she was dead. But why? Because she knew something, Abdul said quietly. Something about your father's death that Samir couldn't risk getting out. Thunder cracked overhead as they pulled into the underground parking of Al Farouk Industries. Security guards approached the car, but backed off when they recognized Khalid. The board meeting is on the top floor, Ahmed reported. Your mother's broadcast is being set up in the lobby. We have 20 minutes. Split up, Khalid decided. Ahmed, take the evidence to Hassan in the board meeting. Mrs. Rahman, you and Abdul try to delay the broadcast. Noor, I'm coming with you, she said firmly. No, I need you to do something else. Something only you can do, he explained quickly. Noor's eyes widened, but she nodded. Be careful, she whispered, squeezing his hand. As they separated, the storm outside intensified. Lightning flashed across the Dubai skyline, illuminating the Al Farouk Industries logo at the top of the building. Khalid took the executive elevator straight to his office. He knew his mother would be there. It was where she used to read to him as a child, where his father had worked late into the night, where everything had begun. The office was dark when he entered, lit only by flashes of lightning through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A figure stood by the window, a woman in an expensive black dress. "Hello, Mother," Khalid said quietly. Amira Al Farouk turned slowly. 20 years had lined her face, but her eyes were the same, dark and unreadable, just like his own. "My son," she whispered, "you've grown so handsome. Save it." Khalid's voice was cold. "Why now? After all these years, why come back?" "Because it's time you knew the truth. About your father, about what really happened that night." "You mean the lie Samir paid you to tell?" Amira's face showed genuine surprise. "You don't understand. Samir protected me. Protected you. Protected us? By killing father? Your father wasn't the man you thought he was." Amira's voice rose. "He was going to destroy everything. The company, our family name, all of it." "No," said a new voice from the doorway. "He was going to expose the truth." Khalid's heart stopped. Standing in the doorway was Noor, and with her was an elderly security guard he barely recognized. "Tell her, Ibrahim," Noor said gently. "Tell her what you saw that night." Ibrahim stepped forward, his old uniform still neat despite his years of retirement. "I was on duty the night Mr. Al Farouk died. I saw you, Mrs. Al Farouk, in Samir's office. You were arguing about the company books, about money that was missing." Amira's face went pale. You have no proof." "Don't I?" Ibrahim pulled out an old phone. "Back then, security cameras recorded to tapes, but I had just bought my first camera phone. Thought it was pretty clever to record the security feed on it. Never thought I'd need it, until the tapes mysteriously disappeared the next day." He pressed play. The grainy video clearly showed Amira and Samir arguing, their voices barely audible. "He knows," Amira was saying, "and he found the transfers." "Then he has to be dealt with," Samir replied coldly. "Tonight." "But he's your brother, and this company is my life. Make your choice, Amira. Help me or lose everything." The video ended. Amira sank into a chair, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "He said no one would get hurt," she whispered. "Just that Malik would be scared enough to step down. I didn't know. I didn't know they were going to kill him." "But you let them blame Omar's father," Khalid said. "You took the money and disappeared, letting your own son think you were dead." "I was a coward," Amira admitted, tears falling. "And once the lie started, I couldn't stop it. Samir said he would kill you if I ever came back." Lightning flashed again, and in its bright glare, they saw another figure in the doorway. Samir stood there, a gun pointed steadily at Khalid. "How disappointing," he said smoothly. "I had such a perfect story prepared." The grieving mother, revealing how her husband's mental instability led to his own death. History repeating itself with the son. He smiled coldly. "Now I'll have to improvise." "It's over, Uncle," Khalid said calmly. "The board has the evidence. The police are on their way." "You think evidence matters?" Samir laughed. "Money matters. Power matters. By the time they arrive, you'll have followed in your father's tragic footsteps, and your little cleaning lady can join you." He swung the gun toward Noor, but before he could pull the trigger, Amira suddenly lunged forward, knocking him off balance. The gun went off, the shot going wild. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Security guards burst in, led by Ahmed. Samir tried to run but slipped on the wet marble floor, where rain had blown in through the open balcony door. As he fell, he grabbed for Noor's arm, pulling her toward the balcony's edge. Khalid moved without thinking, diving forward. His hand caught Noor's just as Samir lost his grip, but Samir wasn't falling alone. His other hand had caught Khalid's jacket. For a moment they were frozen in a terrible tableau. Noor holding Khalid's hand, Khalid stretched between her and the uncle who had destroyed his family, 40, stories above Dubai's rain-soaked streets. "Help me," Samir pleaded, his cold facade finally cracking. "Nephew, please." Khalid looked into his uncle's eyes, seeing for the first time not the powerful man who had shaped his life, but a desperate, haunted soul who had lost everything that truly mattered. "I forgive you," Khalid said softly. Then, with his free hand, he reached down to grab his uncle's arm, just as the security guards rushed forward to pull them all to safety. As Samir was led away in handcuffs, Khalid pulled Noor close, feeling her trembling. "Are you okay?" he whispered. She nodded against his chest. "I was so scared, not of falling, but of losing you." Amira watched them, tears streaming down her face. "You're a better person than I ever was," she said to her son. "You chose love over revenge." "No, mother," Khalid replied, his arms still around Noor. "I chose truth. The rest—" He looked down at the remarkable woman who had changed. His life, the rest was fate. The storm was beginning to pass. Through the windows they could see hints of dawn breaking over Dubai. A new day was coming, one that would bring its own challenges and changes. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that's all the truth you need. But in the back of the police car taking him away, Samir smiled slightly as he watched Layla's car pull away from the building. Some secrets, it seemed, were still safe, and as long as one secret remained hidden, this story wasn't over. 1 month later, Dubai had returned to its normal rhythm. The scandal surrounding Samir's arrest and Omar's conviction had faded from the headlines. Al Farouk Industries' stock had recovered stronger than ever, but for Khalid and Noor, life would never be the same. Noor stood in her parents' new apartment, helping her mother arrange flowers in the sunny living room. The rehabilitation center had worked wonders. Her father was walking almost normally now, even talking about returning to teaching part-time. "Have you seen the news?" her mother asked, turning up the TV. Layla's face filled the screen. She was giving an interview about her ordeal as Omar's wife, playing the role of innocent victim perfectly. "I had no idea about any of it," she was saying, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. "The fraud, the conspiracy, I was just another victim of Omar's lies." Noor switched off the TV. Something about Layla's performance felt wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on what. Her phone buzzed. A message from Khalid. "Meeting running late. Dinner at 8 instead of 7. She smiled as she typed back, "Of course. Don't work too hard." Their relationship had blossomed over the past month, much to Dubai society's ongoing fascination, but Noor had kept her job at the cleaning company, refusing Khalid's offers to promote her. "I want you to be proud of who I am," she'd told him, "not who you could make me." He'd looked at her with such tenderness then. "I fall more in love with you every day," he'd said simply. At Al Farouk Industries, Khalid was indeed in a meeting, but not a business one. Mrs. Rahman sat across from him looking troubled. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, sliding a file across his desk. "Show me again," he said. The file contained photos taken the night before Samir's arrest. They showed Layla entering Desert Rose Holdings, carrying a briefcase. More photos showed her leaving hours later, empty-handed. "The briefcase contained documents," Mrs. Rahman explained. "Bank records from what our sources say. Something Samir was keeping as insurance. And now Layla has them." Khalid rubbed his temples. "The question is, why hasn't she used them yet? Maybe she's waiting for the right moment. Your announcement. Tonight. We'll go ahead as planned," Khalid said firmly. "I won't let fear rule my life anymore." That evening, Dubai's elite gathered at the Armani Hotel in the Burj Khalifa. The occasion was a charity gala, but everyone knew the real reason they were there. Rumors had been swirling about a major announcement from Khalid Al Farouk. Noor arrived in a simple but elegant blue gown, immediately spotting Layla holding court among her usual admirers. Their eyes met briefly, and Noor was surprised to see not hatred in Layla's gaze, but something closer to desperation. Khalid found her by the windows overlooking the city lights. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "So do you." She straightened his tie. "Ready for your big speech?" Before he could answer, a commotion broke out near the entrance. Amira Al Farouk had arrived, her first public appearance since the scandal. The crowd parted as she made her way to her son. "Mother," Khalid said stiffly. They had spoken little since that night, both unsure how to bridge 20 years of lies. "Khalid, please," Amira said urgently, "don't make your announcement tonight. There's something you need to know first." "What's wrong?" But before she could answer, Layla appeared beside them, her smile brittle. "Mrs. Al Farouk, how lovely to see you. Khalid, darling, everyone's waiting for your speech." Khalid looked between the two women, sensing undercurrents he didn't understand. But the crowd was indeed gathering, looking expectant. He made his way to the small stage, pulling Noor with him. The room fell silent as he took the microphone. 20 years ago, he began, "my father had a dream for this company, not just to build buildings or make money, but to build a legacy of truth and honor. I lost sight of that dream somewhere along the way, but someone helped me find it again." He turned to Noor, taking her hand. which is why tonight I'm announcing not just a new charitable foundation in my father's name, but also—" He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small box. "Noor, will you—" "Stop!" Layla's voice rang out. She strode forward, clutching a manila envelope. "Before you make a fool of yourself, you should see this." She thrust the envelope at Khalid. Inside were photos, old ones, showing his father in what appeared to be secret meetings with business rivals. "Your father wasn't the saint you think." "He was," Layla said triumphantly. "He was planning to sell out the company before Samir stopped him. These prove it." A murmur went through the crowd, but before Khalid could respond, another voice spoke up. "No, they don't." Amira stepped forward. "Because I took those photos. Your father," she turned to Khalid, "was meeting with federal investigators. He'd discovered that Samir was working with foreign agents, selling classified technology through the company. That's what got him killed. That's why I had to disappear, because I knew if I stayed, they'd kill you too." Layla's face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I?" Amira opened her clutch, pulling out an old USB drive. "This contains the real documents, not the fake ones Samir gave you. Why do you think he kept you around, Layla? You were just another pawn in his game." Security guards appeared, quietly surrounding Layla. In the confusion, she dropped the envelope, photos scattering across the floor. As they led her away, she looked back at Khalid with tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to matter," she whispered. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Noor stepped forward, picking up the fallen photos. She handed them to Amira. "Your husband was a good man," she said softly, "and your son is just like him." Amira looked at Noor with new respect. "Take care of him," she said. "He needs someone who sees the truth, even when it's hard to face." Khalid cleared his throat, still holding the ring box. "I believe I was in the middle of something." The crowd laughed, the tension breaking. Noor turned back to him, her eyes shining. "Yes," she said simply. "I haven't asked the question yet," he pointed out, smiling. "Ask me anyway." Hands so under the glittering lights of Dubai's tallest tower, surrounded by the city's elite but seeing only each other, Khalid al-Farouk asked Noor to be his wife. Her answer, of course, was still yes. Later that night, they stood on the balcony of Khalid's penthouse, looking out at the city they both loved. "What happens now?" Noor asked. "Now?" Khalid pulled her close. "Now we write our own story. One where truth wins over lies, love wins over power, and a cleaning lady teaches a billionaire what really matters in life." "Sounds like a fairy tale," she teased. "No," he said softly, kissing her. "It sounds like us." Below them, Dubai sparkled like a jewel in the desert night. Somewhere in that glittering landscape, a former society queen sat in a jail cell, contemplating her choices. A mother began the long journey of redemption with her son. And a father's legacy lived on through the son who had finally understood his most important lesson, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or dirhams, but in the courage to trust your heart. As for Khalid and Noor, they had rewritten the rules of their world, proving that real love knows no boundaries of class or status. Their story would be told for years to come, not just as a society scandal or a business triumph, but as proof that sometimes the most precious things in life come disguised as simple choices: to trust, to forgive, to love. And in the end, isn't that what every great love story is really about? At the end,